Hey, everybody, you've just tuned in to the Steel City Blitz Steelers Podcast, and we are officially in the midst of what's known as the legal tampering period. It's the time when teams can legally tamper with free agents and the like, and boy, was the NFL busy today, as were our very own Pittsburgh Steelers, and we have a lot to cover. And first and foremost, thanks again for listening, and be safe out there. I know many of you are on many different ends of the coronavirus or COVID-19 spectrum when it comes to how serious things are. All I can tell you is just keep washing those hands and social distancing, people. Social distancing, which is why we do the podcast from three such remote places in the United States of America. Anyway, Ian and Ben are joining me tonight because we have a ton to cover. Ian, how are things for you this evening?
Pretty good. Everything's more or less shut down here around Pittsburgh. The governor issued an order today that all bars and restaurants in Pennsylvania have to close. So it's going to be pretty quiet here in the greater Pittsburgh area for the next few weeks. So plenty of time to just happened over the weekend. Well, actually, real St. Patrick's Day is tomorrow, Tuesday, but the parade events, festivities the parade was canceled, but that didn't stop some people from parading themselves through the streets. I was not one of them. But nevertheless,
that's unfortunate.
It's going to be quiet here in Pittsburgh for the next few weeks. So a good time to, keep an eye on the Steelers and what they're doing. Thankfully, we have some news.
And, of course, chiming in there on the other side is Ben, who was told he can't work out anymore, and he's struggling with that. Ben, you going to make it, man?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. The governor here also issued the same order. Bars and restaurants are closed except for takeout and delivery. And she banned gatherings of more than 25 people. So the gym had an occupancy issue, and they closed. Consequently, it's going to be in a bad mood for a while.
I don't know what to make of it. My daughter's home from college because hers closed, and my son's obviously home. Our place where I teach and he attends is closed up, and today was basically day one of that, and I'm already going out of my skull. So I'm really hoping that this thing moves along a lot faster than what they're suggesting. But enough of that. People are here. Hopefully,
what they're trying to do is give this thing a chance to incubate, and keep us all separated and then let it flame out. And I hope it works. I hope they're right.
I do too.
We'll see. The Bay Area is from basically San Jose to Pomona, which is North Bay to South Bay, and both sides, San Francisco, Oakland, all of those suburbs. The Bay Area is on a mandatory quarantine as of 9 p.m. tonight.
Oh, boy. Well,
yep. I mean, Seattle's next, man. Seattle is next.
What Italy did and other countries in Europe, and I think it's a matter of time, and it's going to be a real eye-opener for a lot of Americans, but I know you guys aren't here to listen to that. You want to hear some Steelers talk and get away from all that, so that's what we're here for.
Okay.
We'll do our best anyway. Let's just jump right in here. And the Steelers went ahead today and placed the franchise tag on Mr. Bud Dupree. And that means that he will be a Steeler at least for one more season, as Kevin Colbert said at the Combine. He stated quite clearly that when we tag a guy, it's with the intention that we hope, and I stress hope, to sign him to a long-term deal. But we shall see. Ian, I'm assuming you thought this was the right move, and what are your hopes for a potential long-term deal for Bud?
So previously on the podcast, I had said my, probability that I thought of signing him was very, very low. And that was all, as we talked about before, contingent upon the collective bargaining agreement passing. And the real crux of the CBA passing was for the 30% rule to go away, which makes all of the restructures that we've been getting words about today happening a lot easier to happen with 30% rule going away. So that being said, they were able to free up enough cap room to work that franchise tag underneath the cap right now. Currently, it's valued at about $15.8 million. I'll say say that with subject to change because that's the linebacker number. The defensive end number is a bit higher. I know that Shaq Barrett in Tampa is appealing his tag as a linebacker and trying to get the defensive end number. And then there's rumors that even some of the interior linemen, the defensive tackles, are appealing their franchise tag numbers and want to be considered as pass rushers as well, rather than as interior linemen. So there may be some change with those franchise tag numbers, but where it stands right now, the Steelers are currently under the cap just barely, based on our best estimations, because we don't know, what some of the minimum salary schedules are and things like that. The restructure numbers haven't come out exactly. And as you said at the beginning, we're in the legal tampering period. So the franchise tag is solid. The cuts are happening, but any contract agreements can't actually take effect until the start of the new league year, which happens with the start of free agency. To answer your other question, as far as a long-term deal goes, I would look at the deals that Green Bay gave to Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith last year. Those numbers are probably about in the range of where Bud Dupree will fall. Zadarius Smith, he got a contract that was a $20 million signing bonus, so that would be more cash up front than Dupree's getting right now with the franchise tag. And his deal was a 4-year, $66 million deal. But his first year cap hit, which is important for right now, was only $7.2 million. So potentially, if they gave Dupree an identical contract to what his Kentucky counterpart, Zadarius Smith, got, because they both came out of the same draft class in Kentucky, they could potentially reduce his cap hit in half versus what it is on the franchise tag. The future year numbers are a lot more. It goes up to 17, 20, 21. But that being said, for a year one situation, they could potentially save some money there. And that may be kind of their thinking as well, that they're, franchising him now that gives them till, the middle of summer to work out July a long-term 15th. Deal. Yep. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. July 15th to work out a long-term deal. And if they do, that potentially then frees up cap room to, sign their draft picks essentially.
Yeah. So a lot to unpack there with him. And as you said, there's comparable deals with the two gentlemen in Green Bay, and, the debate over who's a pass rusher, who's not, all that kind of stuff, and where those things fall. So Ben, I'll basically throw the same question to you, but I'm also going to add in there. Are you concerned that if they do this, that they're going to lock up an awful lot of money with 3 or 4 defensive guys in terms of Watt, who's going to have a huge payday coming? Obviously, Cam and Tuitt also have some pretty big chunks there as well.
What was the original question?
Well, my original question was thoughts on the Dupree tagging. Was it the right move? And then is signing him to a long-term deal the priority here, which I think it is. But what just your overall thoughts on that, and then the fact that they could ultimately be paying 4 guys along the front pretty significant money.
I think it was the right move given the circumstances.
Yeah.
You've got a shot maybe this year and next, and that's it. And then, what I mean by a shot is a shot at contending, being a champion. So you kind of go all in, and Dupree, I don't think that, well, I'll circle back to that. But yeah, this year, they are going to have some issues because they're puddle deep now at linebacker. They got nobody behind the starters. I mean, basically, you've got Bush and Vince, your starters at inside, and Watt and Dupree outside, and the guys behind them are very inexperienced. So the young kids are going to have to step up. Maybe
and that comes with the cuts of Chicolo and Barron that happened today.
So,
right.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
So, was it the right move? Yes, it was, but it's not without consequence. As far as paying all those guys big money up front, and the 4 guys you're talking about are Dupree, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, and TJ Watt, who is going to make $24 million next summer per year, I'm going to guess.
He's going to buy a lot of Subway sandwiches.
Yeah, I don't see them paying both those guys a combined $40 million a year. I just don't.
I don't either.
They might, but I don't think so. I do believe Colbert when he says that he wants to sign a long-term deal with Dupree. He's trying to negotiate in good faith, and I get it. And if they can structure it to make it work for the team, they'll do it. Maybe have some bigger cap hits scheduled later in the contract schedule. I don't know.
Right.
But I am not a fan of signing Bud Dupree long term. I'll just go on record and say that right now. He's had one good year out of 5. Yeah. I don't trust him to stay productive. And more than that, I suspect that another guy who was a very athletic linebacker could perform well opposite TJ Watt in that spot on the right. So all of that being said, I kind of hope they don't. And I would be surprised, honestly, if they come to terms for 2 reasons. One, they're not going to be willing to pay what he wants. And 2, and I've said this before, Bud's got one shot at a big contract right now, is the way his agent has to look at it. And he would be professionally negligent if he didn't try to maximize this opportunity for his client. Absolutely maximize it. And if he accepts anything less than, say, $16.2 million per year, he should be fired. He should.
Well, that's exactly where I am. I think this is going to end up being a one-year rental type thing, and I think Dupree's going to be gone next year because I just don't see him paying that much money for 2 outside pass rushers. But, stranger things have happened. But I think the point you're making about his agent maximizing what really does amount to his last big contract, I think it has tremendous merit. And I think that's a huge factor here. So when Colbert goes in there and probably, in their opinion, lowballs him a little bit, I think that's where it's going to be stuck and he'll play under the tag and we move on. But I'm also, like you, Ben, I'm also a little hesitant about what he's going to be able to do. 4 years of relatively average play, a really solid year this year, and I'm not overly confident that he's going to be able to repeat that. So, obviously I hope I'm wrong. We often hope we're wrong on this show, but the tagging of Bud Dupree, Ian, basically it was just a matter of the other shoe dropping, and eventually it did with Anthony Chiquillo being cut, being released, if you will. Your thoughts on that, and is this a situation they're just going to try to find depth in the draft now? What do you do there at that outside linebacker reserve spot?
For starters, it's about damn time. I mean, they probably should have cut Chiquillo last year whenever he got into that off the field incident. But they kept him around. His salary had an escalator in it this year with a $5 million base salary. So they saved $5 million against the cap by cutting him. So that was absolutely the right move to make, considering that, his dead money's only around $1 million. So, I mean, he was set to count almost $7 million towards the salary cap for a backup outside linebacker that, really was only good on special teams. So they can get similar special teams acumen from a handful of guys. But Ben's point's absolutely right. The younger guys are going to have to step up. Your backups now are Ola Adeni and Tuzar Skipper, and probably going to have to add someone in the draft because there really isn't there really isn't a lot of money to spend in free agency right now. On the point about Dupree being on a 1-year contract, I'm firmly of the opinion that there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal because it doesn't hamstring you in the future. So if Dupree plays under the cap this year, or under the franchise tag this year, then that's a big salary number, but it's just for this year, right? Kind of like back in the day with Jason Worlds when they gave him the transition tag. People were saying they should have signed Jason Worlds to a long-term deal, and then he retired the next year to go off and be a Jehovah's Witness or something. So that 1-year deal didn't hamstring them in the future as far as dead cap money went. So I think that if Dupree plays under the tag this year, it is what it is, and they're able to handle it with the cap dollars. There's potentially more, restructures or extensions coming. Cam Hayward's in the last year of his deal with a $9.5 million base salary, so he's a potential candidate to get extended. Joe Hayden got restructured today. Vance McDonald got restructured today. Chris Boswell got restructured today. So there's potentially some other deals out there to do to save some cap room as well. Ramon Foster retired, which was a huge benefit for the Steelers, both from a PR standpoint of not having to trade or cut him. And Foster is also able just to spend his whole career here and retire as a Steeler. So I think it's a good parting for everyone there.
Yeah, I'll have some takes on Ramon Foster here coming up shortly. But Ben, I know you like me, like Ian. None of us have really been fans of Anthony Chickillo, so not a surprise at all. But I'll let you comment on that. But I'll also transition you into Mark Barron as well, who plays just the 1 year in Pittsburgh, and I'm not surprised by this at all. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on those two guys.
I'm going to throw a wild card in here. How big a disappointment was Johnny Holton, who was also cut today? I mean, I thought that kid was going to be a special teams demon, number 5 wide receiver that would eventually become like a number 3, and he did nothing after the preseason. He was, except drop the ball.
Well, yeah, that's a fair assessment. I mean, I really did think he was going to be a guy that they could use occasionally. Just, here, Johnny, go run a fly route and catch the damn ball. And it just never came together for him. And he's obviously smaller potatoes compared to these two guys that were cut.
Yeah.
But yeah,
as far as
is.
Chickillo goes,
Yeah.
Chickillo sucks. We've all gone on record for that. I'm just saying it. He sucks. He's not good.
No.
He can't defend the run to save his life. He's a slightly above average pass rusher, but he's incredibly inconsistent. He's got a good burst off the line. Not real strong. Yeah, whatever. Goodbye. Go sign with the Patriots again. I'd really like that. Please do that. Mark Barron, the thing that sucks about Mark Barron leaving was you could run the nickel and you could have 2 fast linebackers on the field. And what they're going to have to try and do now is backfill that extra backer spot with Terrell Edmonds, who also can't cover.
Right.
And bring in another safety to play strong, or bring in another guy who is a fast linebacker.
And probably not on this roster right now.
Maybe,
Gilbert, maybe. I mean, I don't know who else it would be.
Gilbert is the possibility. Ulysses Gilbert, Uli Gilbert, if he got enough out of being in the system for a year, maybe he could come in and he could be that guy on third downs when they run with 4 backers, which they don't always do, but sometimes they do. Second and third down passing situations. That was the one thing that Barron helped out with. Other than that, Bush can do everything that Barron did and do it better. I don't know why he got so many snaps last year. It still bugs me. So that said, good riddance. Bye-bye. Obviously we wish the guy well, but he didn't justify his cap number. It's the best thing for the team that he goes ahead and he leaves. But like I said before, the young guys are going to have to step up. Gilbert, Ola, those guys are going to have to step up. Tuzar Skipper loves being a Steeler. Better work his ass off and bring something this year, because we need those young guys to step up.
No, I'm totally in agreement there. I do want to mention too, and you guys kind of alluded to this already, that Vance McDonald restructured today, and really it had kind of started in recent weeks, but I saw a little bit of it this morning as well. There was some speculation that even he was on the chopping block. And we none of us really would agree to that, simply because then what do you got left? There's no way in God's green earth you're going to go into training camp with Zach Gentry as your number one tight end. So, or even number two for that matter. So, the fact that they restructured him today, Ian, was that really a surprise to you at all?
No, not at all. We talked before about sort of the replacement level cost of Vance McDonald, right? That you would save $5.5, maybe $6 million against the cap if they cut him, and what you could get for that level, which was basically a Jesse James type player. The contract that Dallas gave to Blake Jarwin today was a lot more than what we would have saved cutting Vance McDonald. So you're not even getting a player as good as Blake Jarwin. I know a lot of people like his upside in Dallas, but he's not really a proven commodity either at this point. So it's one of those things where they weren't going to be able to get someone as good as Vance for what they were paying Vance. So they were going to keep him around anyways. And the unique thing about Vance's contract, because it was one that was done by the 49ers and then traded to us, was that his contract had some team options in there that the team can choose whether or not to extend him for a year or two on the end of his deal, which is something the Steelers don't typically do, but it was something that the 49ers did. And one other thing to add on Ben's point about Mark Barron is the Steelers have, for a few years now, really since they lost Shazier, been trying to work in sort of this heavy dime package where they have a third safety on the field trying to cover tight ends. They haven't really successfully been able to do that. Signing Barron was sort of a hybrid of that Barron had mostly played linebacker in the NFL, but had played safety in college. He just was not quite fast enough. He was always one step too slow, right? He always got to he got to the receiver a step after the receiver caught the ball. He would catch a running back coming out of the backfield a step after he got to the first down line. He just was never on the ball. He was always just after the ball, which in today's NFL isn't good enough. So I don't really know what exactly that means for the defense. I don't know if God forbid, they give Marcus Allen a shot in there, which I don't want to see. But I think the actual solution, I think the much better solution that will probably be Cam Sutton in some type of four cornerback look, where you have Sutton and Hilton playing both slots, and then Hayden and Nelson on the outside. So I think a more traditional dime package, especially on third and longs, is going to be more of what we see with Cam Sutton getting more snaps.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
With four wides,
yeah, go ahead, man.
With four wides, you can do that. If you're not in four wides, if you're trying to cover a tight end and a running back, you're not going to use Cam Sutton. You're just not. I don't see it. Cam Sutton, he's not a heavy package guy. He's not a guy who can run with a tight end and then take him down. He's not a good tackler. Sorry, Steelers fans. I know you hate it when I say that, but Cam Sutton is not a good tackler, which is why he did not play on first and second down last year. He's great in coverage, which is wonderful. He's a smart player. He can play the whole field. It's great, but he's not a good tackler. So I don't see him covering tight ends. I don't really see him covering running backs either, at least not, say even like a James Conner type. Because James Conner would run him over. He'd catch the ball and run him over. Juju would too, for that matter.
Yeah. Like you were saying, with Barron gone, that possibility does exist. You slide Terrell Edmonds down in there, and of course that means you've got to add in another safety. And
hopefully,
I don't think there's
hopefully
anybody on the roster.
you're adding another safety, or Yuli Gilbert steps up and becomes that guy.
Well, that'd be ideal. Absolutely.
That would be outstanding. Yeah, because he's got the speed, he's got the lateral quickness. His coverage is it wasn't great last year. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And maybe he's taken some strides and become a better coverage backer, and that would be, like you said, a really ideal situation because Matakevich isn't going to be that guy.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, we love Red. on special teams and the occasional fill-in play. But, yeah, there's no way you can count on him long-term as a linebacker in this defense, and that just is what it is. Guys, I do want to take a moment to mention that the big ragu, Ramon Foster, we did mention that he formally retired today. I think it was pretty matter of fact that he was probably going to get cut by the Steelers had he not retired. There were some early rumors that they were going to try and shop him. You're not going to shop a 34-year-old offensive guard who hasn't had his best years the last couple of years. So I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's just
I don't understand I don't understand how Steelers fans thought that the Steelers could get anything for him in trade. His blocking fell off a cliff last year.
It did. That said, what I do want to say is that I think he was a great story. A guy that was just, kind of an afterthought coming out of Tennessee, and he worked his tail off and got himself into the starting lineup and has been, a very solid player there for a long, long time. Great guy off the field, great guy in the locker room. I wouldn't be surprised, and Ian, maybe you'll know this better than me. I wouldn't be surprised to see him do something with the Steelers, maybe with their preseason telecasts or something like that, and maybe work his way into a TV role, because he seems to do well when he gets a mic shoved in his face.
He does, and he was always a guy that was in contention for what do they call it, the Chief Award for being the most media friendly. All the media guys today said how he was such a good interview and was so open with them. And I mean, he's a smart guy too. He was the Steelers player rep with the union as well.
Yep.
So I definitely could see him, maybe taking over for Edmund Nelson on the preseason pregame broadcast or somewhere else, maybe jumping in with Tunch and Wolf a few times on their radio show. So I think he definitely has a career in football after his playing days are now over.
Yeah, I just kind of got a gut feeling that's where it's going.
Ben, I kind of wonder if he isn't going to end up taking a bigger role in the NFLPA, becoming part of the executive committee, being part of the hierarchy there. That's just my gut feeling. That's my take at this point. He's been involved with the NFLPA for so long and has been so active for so long. And you look at the end of Charlie Batch's career. When he was done playing, he didn't really, he retired sort of, but he didn't file his paperwork. And he was still involved with the NFLPA. And I kind of wonder if there isn't going to be a similar role for Ramon.
I would not be a bit surprised if that's where he's headed. He certainly enjoys being in the Pittsburgh area, and I don't see him taking off any time. But when I look at some of the stiffs that ESPN puts up on NFL Live and some of that, and I just think to myself, Ramon Foster would be so much better. But
you're right.
You're right. What do I know? I'm a guy sitting behind a microphone right now.
You're right. I agree with you.
Yeah, I just do. I think he would be. I think he would be a good choice to do that, and wish him well. Either way. So, guys, obviously, there's just been tons of activity throughout the NFL. Just sitting here at recording this podcast, the Bills have traded for Stephon Diggs from the Vikings. So it's just been one thing after another. And the new league year, of course, starts on Wednesday. 4 p.m. Eastern time, and teams have to be compliant, being under the cap and all this other stuff. And that's also legal free agency when these signings can actually happen. Ian, kind of a football, non-football thing. Is the NFL doing the right thing by continuing this, or should they be like the other leagues and step aside and let the coronavirus thing run its course? Where do you fall with this?
Well, the NFL is slightly different than the other leagues because they're not in season right now. They're not actually playing games. All the other leagues were playing either spring training, preseason games in baseball, or actual regular season games in, between MLS soccer and NHL, NBA. So it's one of those things where it's the off season. you could, with technology as it is now, you can do a lot by video conference, things like that. The only real drawback right now as we get into both free agent signings and with pre-draft visits and things like that is you're not going to be able to have your team doctors do medicals on guys because of all the travel restrictions. So you're going to either have to do physicals with doctors you trust in another city, or put some kind of clause in the contract that it's contingent on them passing a physical once they're able to come to Pittsburgh and do that. The flip side of that for draft picks is the NFL seems to be moving ahead with their normal April draft date, and it's just, they're just going to televise the announcing of the picks and not going to have a bunch of people in a room. So you might get to the draft and have medical questions on a guy that you can't answer at this point in time, or you're going to have to trust doctors that you may not be familiar with. So it's going to put a lot of extra pressure and weight on the scouting staff for the pre-draft stuff. And I think you're going to see, especially the Steelers, who are creatures of habit, sort of rely a lot more on their existing connections, right? They've always had a good connection with Ohio State's program. They always seem to get good information on players out of there. Wisconsin, they've had a good relationship with Paul Chryst, their head coach, who used to be Pitt's head coach. So they knew him while he was here. So those existing relationships with coaches, with assistant coaches, with coordinators, things like that. The Steelers have signed on a bunch of former college coaches and coordinators to their pro staff now. So falling back on people that have direct knowledge that you can trust is going to be really key heading into this draft season, and key for the free agency season as well. But the Steelers won't have a whole bunch of money to sign anyone with now that they've franchise tagged Dupree. So less important for us for free agency, much more important for us for the draft.
Yeah, and the NFL has, correct me if I'm wrong, they have canceled the 30 potential visits for draftees, right?
For every team, yes, that's correct.
For every team, yeah. Ben, what's your take? Is the NFL doing the right thing here by continuing with this, or do you think they should step aside?
No, I think they're doing the right thing. Trying to limit travel right now is key. I mean, every organization, every company I know of is doing it. Air travel in particular is a big incubator for disease. I mean, how many times have you been sitting next to somebody who had a cold on a plane and then caught it? I mean, it sucks. It is what it is. Yeah. Especially with coach room limitations being what they are now. I mean, you're right up against one another, Oh
yeah.
I don't remember the last time I flew and somebody in coach wasn't pissed off because of somebody invading their personal space, and it's just like, dude, you're on a plane. It's going to be what it's going to be. You can get mad about it, but you should have been prepared for this emotionally, mentally before you boarded the plane, and whatever. So yeah, probably a good idea. Although I do think that the Patriots will go ahead and cheat, because it's what they do. And they will have some visits somehow, some way. And they will flout the rules in some way.
They'll find a way around the rule. Yep.
They will find a way around the rule. They will send someone to visit the guy someplace or something, and they'll find a way to cheat, because it's what they do.
Before we wrap things up, I do want to get you guys your thoughts. The CBA obviously is passed. That's in large part why we're talking about what we're talking about. But some of the big idea things here that automatically kicks in the extra playoff team for each conference. So they go from 12 to 14. One team each now will have a bye. That means you'll have 3 games on wild card weekend, so to speak. And also going to have in 2021, you'll have the 17-game schedule, to which we still don't understand quite how that's going to work with, who gets the odd-numbered home games, who doesn't, is it neutral site, all this other stuff. Ian, where do you fall on that, just obviously as a fan? I mean, the players aren't crazy about the 17th game, but it is what it is. What is your thoughts on it?
So I think the best way to do a 17th game is to have them all at a neutral site. So you still get 8 home, 8 away games, 8 true away games for each team, and then have neutral site games. My preference would have been to see a second bye week added in, preferably like directly after the neutral site game. So if teams are traveling internationally for that game, you have another week to kind of recoup and recover from the extra travel. Because this isn't just going to be London. I mean, they're going to expand to Mexico. They're probably going to look to go to China, Japan, Germany, Brazil, all these other places that had, NFL Europe teams or have had other NFL interests. They're really looking to expand the global market here, which is going to mean more money for teams and potentially for players, because that money all does filter down to what the salary cap numbers are also. As far as the extra team in the playoff goes, I don't think it's a massive impact to the playoffs. I think it is a big impact as far as the only one team getting a bye, but the Steelers would have been the 7th seed this year. There's no way they would have gone to Kansas City and beaten Patrick Mahomes in that team. So you still would have had all the same playoff matchups essentially this year. The interesting note is that the Steelers, if this had been in place for the last CBA, never would have missed the playoffs the last 10 years, because every year they missed the playoffs. Even the 8-8 years, they finished 7th in the AFC. So that kind of tells you just how close they are. And as a side note, here's an interesting question for you guys. So if 7 teams had made the playoffs, the Bears would have made the playoffs in both 2011 and 2012. Lovie Smith got fired after 2012 in Chicago. Do you think they still would have fired him if they would have made the playoffs those 2 years?
I don't know. I don't care.
I
don't want to see mediocre teams in the playoffs. I hate this. I hate it. I don't want to see a bunch of 8-8, 7-9 teams making the playoffs. It's going to be like hockey, where more than half the damn league makes the playoffs. It's bullshit.
That was my argument today in the quick hitters, which you can find only at SteelCityBlitz.com. I said
that's bullshit.
The NBA and the NHL, more than half of the teams make the playoffs, and many times they're under 500, and I don't think that's right.
No, I agree with you. I liked it the way it was. It was a perfect playoff format, and they're screwing with it because they're the NFL and they're a bunch of greedy bastards.
Yep.
And I get it, Anyway, getting to the 17 games, I think the unintended consequence is going to be this. Guys are going to report injuries that don't exist and take a week off. I see it coming.
You might be onto something. Yeah.
I am sure it is going to happen. The days of the Iron Man NFL guy are over.
Oh, yeah.
And guys are going to take weeks off. I got this nagging thing and blah, blah, blah. Yep, it's really bad. I got to take the week off. Not even that. Just, I don't think I can practice. You can't practice all week. Fine, you're not going to play. And it is what it is. I mean, especially guys like, and I hate to say this, but wide receivers. Freaking wide receivers are notorious for being lazy. Not Antonio Brown-like, lazy little bastards. And I got this thing, and I just can't get over it, and my hamstring, and and they're going to feel justified doing so. They're going to feel justified. So the product is going to suffer on the field. I'm not a big fan of the 17th game for that reason. We'll see what happens, but man, I don't think it'll diminish any of the fans' desire to watch, but I don't like it.
No, I'm not a big fan of it either. It's not like I'm not going to watch, but I just don't like the wear and tear on these guys as it is. Yes, I know they're getting a reduction in the amount of padded practices and training camp, blah, blah, blah. But, I'm not either. I liked 16 games. I liked the 6 in each conference. And Ian, to answer your question, the playoffs are the key. And if Lovie Smith would have, made the playoffs those years, I think he does keep his job.
I agree with you. And I think it does make an impact as far as, perception of coaches too.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does.
Are you going to be celebrating Mike Tomlin making the playoffs with an 8-8 record? Or are you going to go, Well, that sucks.
No, I don't think it's an issue of celebrating. I think what it is you're able to say, look at what he was able to do. I think we all look at this year, right? I mean, this year was a classic. I mean, that 8-8 season, quite frankly, was a miracle, considering what they were dealing with. You know,
it was.
And I'm not saying that
if they had somehow gone to Kansas City and won, I would be giving him a big pat on the back and an attaboy and going, "Oh my God, you pulled off a miracle." Yes, I would be, and I will admit that. But just making the playoffs and going on a road game and then getting thumped, no,
right? Yeah, no. It's again, that's all conjecture at this point. We'll see where this is going to go, but that is my concern. We're going to see some 7-9 team doing that, and it's going to be fascinating that first weekend. You're going to have 6 NFL playoff games in one weekend, so that's kind of exciting. You'll probably have triple headers both on Saturday and Sunday. And, obviously the lowest remaining seed will play at the top seed who had the bye, and then the other 2 winners will play, So, it'll be interesting. But, yeah, anyway, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank both Ian and Ben for their time this evening, and we'll definitely be keeping track of what's going on in the Berg over the next few days and weeks, of course. And everybody, please stay healthy out there. You've been listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast. And hey, go Steelers.